Raz, nice to see you again. We're here. Again. Yeah, we're going to start.
We're going to have we have a wonderful guest today, Rob. I'm excited. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I've been anxious all day, actually.
Anxious.
Yeah,
Do I make you nervous?
A little bit.
You called me at 8 a.m. in the morning. Hey,
I did.
Rob,
I
how
said,
you
hey,
doing?
let's
Rob
chat.
today. I'm like, yeah, I'm in the gym.
Yeah.
I think you're the first author, so we can check that box.
Cool.
You're somebody I've followed for many years, just have not connected. So it was like, read the book, gave me something tangible. I think, remember, I linked in you when I read the book, say, I got your book.
Yeah.
And then I think from talking to Perrin and JJ, started to build a community of like people who knew you. And then I was just like, God, I'd really like to get Rob on the show. And then it moved pretty quick. That was only, a couple weeks ago?
A couple weeks ago.
So,
and it was a good reminder because I spoke with Perrin today. I hadn't caught up with him for a long time. So that was nice. Yeah.
And I think, first off, thank you, because I think it's the serendipity of the network's been great, but just your willingness to jump in and do this is fantastic. I think we'll do a quick, who you are, but you can chime in on that. You've been in the startup industry, the VC industry, you're an author, show everybody the book.
Buy the book.
We'll get that signed.
And,
I also see you as somebody in the coaching, maybe performance around business. I also know, the funny thing is we realized I worked at BEA, you invested in BEA, which I think you're the first person I've met in the world outside of the VCs who I know who are in it that is an investor in BEA.
Well, you have to be old to be an investor in BEA. Like most people, wouldn't be old enough.
He's 24.
Yeah.
No, that was a great experience.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot to talk about. So we'll dig in. I think what we want to start, and we always do, and then we'll go through thing is like, you're not from Singapore, so how did you get here and why are you still here?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I was born in New York, never lived there. My dad moved us to Tucson, Arizona, which was a much better place, probably nice place to grow up. And after business school, I joined a strategy firm, and they had just opened an office in London. And the firm was headquartered in Boston. And Boston's pretty dull if you're a young single guy.
And cold.
And so I thought I'd go to London and spend 2-3 years, look around and go home. That was a scary long time ago, 35 years ago. I never went home. So 22 years in London. And while I was there, I married a Singaporean, and that is how I ended up here. So
got it.
Yeah.
And how long now in Singapore?
15.
Oh, okay.
In fact, next month will be the 15th
Happy
anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Congrats.
Yeah, cool.
So I'm going to hit the button. We are the Generalist podcast.
Yeah.
And just before the show, you mentioned something and said, hey, I'm the Generalist. There is no one else that actually can pretend to be, because I'm the real thing. Tell me why.
Oh, I don't know if I said quite that, but sure, I'll give it to you.
Let me, screw it.
Well, I think that I mean, so just as a matter of record, I was an engineer, I was a strategy consultant, I was a venture capitalist, I was a corporate executive, I was an entrepreneur, and I've been a coach for a while. So that's quite a few careers. So I think that qualifies me as a generalist. And, people often call me and say like, wow, dude, you've done amazing stuff. It's incredible. I honestly don't feel like that. I feel like if I had been really amazing at one of those things, I'd probably still be doing it, right? Because if you're like the best at something, then the world rewards you and you probably like it a lot and all is good, and you spend your entire life in, I skipped private equity. I did 2 years in private equity, which was my least favorite. And, if you're good at venture capital or strategy consulting or private equity or being an entrepreneur, then you just do it more and more and more. I was pretty good at everything and probably not amazing at any of them.
So it's not a plan then, it's just what's happened?
It's a personality type. We were just talking about that, right? I'm told that, so I'm a Sagittarius, and I'm told that's kind of a thing with us. So I was always, I think, wired that way. It definitely was not a plan, more a restlessness, right? You just you do something for 10 years. I coach a couple of people now who have been in strategy consulting as long as I have. And they're like, yeah, been doing it for 11 years. I think I've got another 5 years left. I was just dying to do something new after 11 years in strategy. Like I had to go be an executive and do a real thing. So, yeah, I think it's just restlessness.
Got it. Makes sense. And do you find though that because you've done that, doesn't that in your current work almost give you the best vantage point? Because now when you're coaching or working with a startup or advising, you have the spectrum of everything they're dealing with you've actually done. So doesn't that help you though from where you are now?
It does. You know, I mean, not just because of like I can relate if they're, depending on what kind of business job they're in, I can probably relate from an experience point of view. But also I think there's a little bit of me that is a chameleon. And I often find myself saying to my clients something like, you know, I can really relate to that because I'm a bit like that. And the number of different things I say that I, you know, that in that you think, well, how can I be like all those things? But it's genuine. I think that I am a little bit of a chameleon, and so I can relate to a lot of different people, as well as from just a professional point of view, sort of all those different experiences. Yeah. So I really am the ultimate generalist.
I think I can relate to what you said because it's based on your experience. You have the moments, you have things that you remember, you have use cases. So the moment you're saying that, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you thinking about that moment, you kind of visualize that and you tell it to your customer. And in that moment, that's what happened to you. That's where why you failed or succeed. And this is the way you are imagining that, or it's a different way?
I think, I'm not sure if I understood, but I think so. I mean, in a way, what I practice as a coach is empathy, right? It's trying to relate to the other person, to put yourself in their shoes, to understand the world through their eyes rather than getting them to understand it through my eyes. That's what an advisor does, right? Yeah. And I think I'm pretty good at that and probably do that quite naturally. I think one of the things about great entrepreneurs, for example, is they're often the opposite. I don't mean that they're unempathetic, although many are, but they're really good at seeing the world through very weird and distinctive eyes, and they can only see it that way, right? And that gives them that unique take that makes them really good at what they do. And sometimes they struggle to see it other ways, and I think that's okay. That single-mindedness is what makes them successful.
You just mentioned something I just went crazy hearing when you explained the difference of advising and coaching. So with coaching, you're saying, I have to see this problem through your eyes, but also they should be tackling the problem. But with advising, you're saying, I see it through the lens of my experience and I'm going to help you with it. Is that a good way of, because that's fantastic.
So. Yeah, I think so. I mean, you know, if you look at the world of strategy consulting or any of those advisory businesses, right, you hire an investment bank, they'll tell you, well, but you know, you got to look at it through the lens of prevailing trading multiples or discounted cash flow or whatever their thing is, right? And in strategy consulting, well, we have a framework which explains what's wrong with your strategic positioning, right? That is a strong invitation to look at it through our eyes. Yeah. And yeah, coaching is also asking people to reframe, but it starts with that empathy.
Yeah. It makes sense. No, that's good. And I had never really thought of it that way. So switching gears a little bit, we noticed you're the chairman of MoneySmart. We're trying to fit that into the puzzle piece.
Pretty easy. So I started 3 different mortgage companies when I was in Europe, and I ran the largest independent publicly listed mortgage business as well. So I knew a lot about mortgages, which is a really dull product, but I really liked the businesses. And when I came here, I thought, well, I should do something in that area because that's what I know about. And I quickly realized that for a bunch of technical reasons that are not that interesting, it's very, very difficult to start a mortgage business here that actually sells mortgages, that writes the mortgages. So I thought, okay, what we should do is just intermediate them, right? Via electronic distribution. And then somebody said, oh, you should go meet this young fellow, Vinod Nair, who had just finished at NUS and was starting a electronic mortgage broker, and we joined forces. So yeah, he had started the business a little while earlier and then done a pivot, and right when I met him, he was just focusing on mortgages. And so that's how we joined up. He's built the business, just to be clear, not me. And he's done a great job, but we've been partners for 15 years, and it's been a good ride. It's pretty good business.
And you're still the chairman.
Still the chairman.
Yeah. He's done, I think he's one of the ones that's probably not talked about enough in the Singapore ecosystem for how long he's been at it and the success they've had.
That's true. I mean, he's literally of the same batch as Surey from Carousel, who's kind of started roughly the same time as Stephen Yanni at Property Guru. So a lot of those guys would have higher profiles. Vin's just kind of a quiet guy, and that's okay, and we just do our thing, you know?
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, it's cool.
And I'm thinking about your generalism and then about specialism, like, you know, mortgages. You just say, I'm specialized in mortgages. And then I'm looking at the book.
Yeah.
Give me the segue, give me the road. How this thing happened? To write a book, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah. Well, there is actually a red thread, a continuous line, I think, that runs through what I've done, not perfectly, but pretty much. And that is that I'm just really interested in building great companies. And, you know, we can talk all day about what does great mean through an economic lens, a cultural lens, but I mean, the fact is you know it when you see it, right? Mm-hmm. You know a truly great company when you see it. And it has to score pretty good or really good on a bunch of dimensions: the technology, the business model, the culture, the organization, the strategy, right? And when you find one of those companies, I think BEA was one, like it's just exciting. It's really energizing, and it's fun to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think there are many ways to contribute to that. And a bunch of them are well known. You can contribute from a strategy point of view, or a technology point of view, or a finance point of view. When I started working with entrepreneurs here, what I quickly realized is that the missing link was the organizational scaling point of view. Most of the entrepreneurs, like Vin, like Surey, like these other guys, come straight out of university. Not only had they never been a manager, they'd never had a job, many of them. Literally, their first job was as CEO. And so there was a lot that they could learn. They're all great at learning from the internet, from books. You can learn about product market fit. You can learn what's a safe note. You can learn how to write a job description. I'll tell you what you can't learn from the internet. You can't learn leadership. You can't learn organizational effectiveness. They're experiential to a large degree. And so I just found that they were struggling in those areas often. I don't mean those two in particular, but just the entrepreneurs that I worked with. And that was where they needed the most help. And I ended up developing real expertise in that area as a result. It was just the missing link. And I think if you live in the US, if you're in Silicon Valley, I don't know what the numbers are, but the average founder is not a 23-year-old. A lot of the founders are older. 38, 40, have worked at Broadcom or Google or wherever. They know a fair amount about management. They're maybe not amazing, but they've seen companies that have scaled. They've kind of learned by immersion. And if not,
there is a support.
And there's a support infrastructure. When they hire that HR person, she's also seen it or he's also seen it, right? And here it was everybody figuring it out. And so I thought the world needed a guidebook. And actually, it's really striking, but if you go do a literature search, right, on how to get product market fit or how to do A/B testing or any of these things, a ton of stuff. If you go to Google and you type, like, I've got a 100-person organization, how do I scale that organization while making the organization perform? How do I build a high-performing, scalable organization? Google has no idea where to send you.
However, ChatGPT maybe.
Yeah, ChatGPT might be better. And so my hope is that Google and ChatGPT will point to this and say, this is how you do it.
Right.
You should ask Rob.
Yeah. I've created my own little GPT, of course, trained on the book, so you can go into it and
Is that on the website? Is it?
No,
just for yourself.
Yeah, just for myself. But sure, I'll
you should sell it.
Yeah.
Yes, I should.
You can scale it.
So I've read the book. Well, actually, I should be really transparent. I was reading the book, and then I was actually opening up Audible, and your book was suggested to me, probably because of some other business books. And then it was like, I looked at it and I saw that you narrated it. So I got that. I'll admit the rest of the book, I listened to you. So you've been in my ear for the last couple of weeks. And I really enjoyed it from the perspective of how you just explained. It's kind of like a guidebook.
Yeah.
I love the recaps. I think I've gone back and like read the recaps as a way of kind of refreshing. And the two things I get out of it from things I remembered is this tooling and rituals are probably the two areas that have resonated with me. What's probably, because you had a bunch of tools in there, I ladder of influence is one. They're not necessarily yours. There's the productivity 2x2. There's probably others. Which is your favorite one that you are always pushing onto an org or a founder?
Definitely productivity and positivity. It's like the simplest of all. It's a 2x2. Former strategy consultant. We love our 2x2s, right? And so let's just kind of take a step back. If you've all been part of organizations, if you think about what makes an organization great, well, it has to get shit done, right?
Yep.
So that's the productivity dimension. Is it working on the right stuff, and is it getting good stuff done? I think every entrepreneur relates to that, right? That's kind of the mantra, is we got to get shit done. And it's actually pretty easy to build a get shit done culture that pays no attention to the other aspect, which is, do people enjoy working there? Are they learning? Is there good communication? Is there trust? Is there breaking down of barriers and building of good cross-functional relationships? So that's the part that I would call the positivity. It's not just the happy clappy, do we have pinball tables? It's like, does the experience of going to work, do I like working with my colleagues? Am I treated in a way that makes me go home and think, yeah, that was really great. I love being in that meeting or being a part of that team. And it's really easy to build a culture that's good at that, but shit on productivity. What's really hard is to build a culture that is simultaneously good on both, where people's experience of doing the work is really one that they enjoy and it gets a lot done. And the question is really simple. How are you going to do that if you don't have a way of measuring it, right? And so the productivity, positivity 2x2, I think, is incredibly simple. If I ask you two to go spend half a day brainstorming how you're going to take this podcast forward, and coming out of it, I grab you and I say, how was it? You'll know. And if I say, was it productive? You'll go, yeah. Did we get a lot done? We got a lot done. If I say, was it positive? I mean, you'll say, yeah, either we really listened to each other and it was a great vibe and dynamic and we built on each other's thoughts, or you'll say, actually, it was kind of tough and, my partner doesn't listen and
I'm
he's
thinking
very
about
stubborn.
the coffee that we had like 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Exactly. And so those are, I think, the two dimensions of a great culture.
Yeah. And I guess it's easy to explain to people how to put it in action.
Yes.
Where some things require a lot more work or strategy to make them work. It came across to me as just like, this is super simple.
Yeah. And if you think about companies, you can find fairly easy examples. A lot of the rocket internet companies were super high on productivity and super low on positivity,
yeah,
right?
A
A lot of the local startups were very high on positivity, and they had a lot of the pinball tables and the breakfast cereal and the town halls, but they weren't actually that fast moving. So I think it's an easy and intuitive framework.
Yeah, and I guess it's also an interesting, almost report card of sorts, because you can look back at it. Because, like you said, you might have someone over here, but it's the combination of the two that actually probably means you're building something meaningful.
Well, I'd say a couple things. One is the positivity is the sustainability. Like, anybody can have a sprint for a month where they get a lot done. And even if it's quite a bit of friction, that's okay. Yeah. But in the long term, people get worn out. People check out emotionally. They don't give 120% to organizations where they don't enjoy being part of the process. So I think it's a sustainability measure. The other thing I really like about the framework is it's very fractal. You can zoom in. I can ask you about a 2-hour meeting. We can zoom out. I can ask you about the 6 months of how the founding team has been interacting and whether it was productive and positive. So it's a cool little measure, and the more you play with it, the more you like it.
Yeah, that one I like.
And now
it.
the question that I have in my head, I'm thinking about organization. I've been in PayPal. So 42,000 people, sometimes 45, sometimes 50, depending the year. how do you scale it? Who's responsible to make this framework happen? Is it the HR? Is it the direct manager? Is it a share responsibility model?
It's a super great question. Look, we know that HR doesn't do that. And they don't do it so consistently that I think hoping that they will wake up one day and do it is not a valid idea. And I think the reason is pretty simple. HR looks at organizations through the lens of individuals. They know how to recruit them, assess them, evaluate them, promote them, train them, compensate them. All good, all necessary. My view is that what makes organizations thrive or not is about the quality of interactions between individuals. And it's way easier to fix the interactions than it is to upgrade all of your talent. And so that's not what HR does. They don't look through the lens of interactions. Some executives do naturally, many do not. The kind of people who tend to think in that way are people you would call like chief of staff. A chief of staff is thinking, okay, that group's not working well with that group, and how do I facilitate? And we need to get these people to communicate more, and maybe we need to change the information flows, and there are too many people in that meeting and not, the wrong ones in that meeting. So they are often the logical person to be a repository. But I'll give you another way of thinking about it. A lot of interactions happen in meetings. And if you think about the cost structure of a company, let's say 70% is labor, workforce, right? And maybe half of that is spent in meetings. So you've actually got a hidden line item in your P&L at PayPal called meetings, but it's hidden. And with 42,000 people, the number is huge. It's by far the biggest single line item other than headcount in total. Yeah. So if you went to, I don't know who runs PayPal these days?
Alex. I forgot his last name, yeah. I'm not there anymore.
If you went to him and said, hey, I want $5 million to do marketing in Asia, he'd go like, yeah, maybe, but show me the ROI. Yeah. Here we're spending like $5 billion on meetings, and we have no ROI. So where am I going with this? I think companies should have chief meeting officers because it's actually the single biggest discretionary spend. And they would be the people who would be the natural owners of this metric. They would say, well, if all of our meetings are productive and positive, then we're doing great.
Yeah. I've always joked that at Microsoft that there should be a Teams plugin that connects to HR that knows everybody's salary. And then as you have a meeting, you can see the things that are going like, this is how much money this meeting's costing you.
Totally.
Because that it's to that point, right?
That's the cost. And then it should also, and I'm working on this, have the benefit. Right. So it says, yeah, you just spent $14,000 on your catch-up, right? But you really crushed it. You came up with 3 new ideas. You clarified the execution of something. Or frankly, you didn't do shit.
Do you think that COVID changed the culture of meetings because there's more remotes than face-to-face, or?
For sure. And I think both some good and some bad. Like we figured out that we can do some stuff remote and that it worked fine. I think one-to-ones, catch-up, stuff like that, get-to-know-you sessions, a lot of stuff like that work fine. Basically, it's a numbers game, right? 1 to 2, a meeting of 2 is pretty close in Zoom or Teams to what it is in person. By the time you get to 6, it's not great. And by the time you're at 10, it's hopeless, right? Terrible. It's just hopeless. So I think it's mostly numbers. So I think some things got better, some things got worse. We learned. But I do think it's part of the future, right? We're not going back. And so one of the things that is happening now, and which I'm very involved in, is to create tools to do exactly what we're talking about, which is to help. OnLoop is one.
Kind of for...
Yeah, OnLoop is one. I'm involved also with another company called Waggle, which is more of a Teams Zoom plugin than OnLoop, which is measuring meetings in real time. So it's giving you the transcript like a Firefly. Yeah. And the summary, and it's capturing your action items and all that stuff. But it's also giving coaching to the individuals. So it's watching out for behaviors, and it's saying, hey, you were really good at asking questions. You need to ask more questions. Or I know you've been trying to get to become more assertive, and you did a great job in that meeting, but the next meeting you didn't say a thing.
It's like Gong.io. Do you know Gong?
It's kind of Gong.io for management.
For management.
Exactly.
Okay.
The other thing it's doing, which is back to this measurement thing, is if you think all my people are on this platform and the AI is assessing the quality of their interactions, if you abstract all that data up, you get a dashboard. And it's essentially an organizational health or organizational performance dashboard. And that is something, again, if you appoint me chief meeting officer, I need a tool. I need a dashboard.
How do you make a decision?
How do I know if we're doing okay or not? And that's the dashboard. But yeah, it's really Gong for everybody.
So when you talk to, I haven't used it. When you talked about the HR stuff, like they're kind of at the top of the stack for managing training. And this jumped out at me in the book where you just kind of threw cold water on the whole idea of like training and how ineffective it can be and some ideas around it. So I wanted to open that up.
I think, look, if you are living in the world of Unilever or, Citigroup, and you expect your employees to be with you for a long time, then investing in helping them to be more effective 10 years from now and improving the kind of talent pool for future managerial roles is probably a good idea. And does training and coaching and all that stuff help? I guess. Honestly, I'm not expert in that, but I know it doesn't help in the short term, right? If you take a young, small entrepreneurial company where performance this year is critical, and you send a bunch of people to management training or get them individual coaching, does it make the company go faster? Which is really what the founder wants to know. The answer is mostly not. So that's one of the reasons that I do a lot more work with groups than with individuals. I think team coaching, for example, can make a company go a lot faster. But yeah, traditional training has, I think, a questionable ROI in the short term.
So from a scale-up perspective, it may not really be the thing to invest a lot of time and money in.
Yeah, and eventually they do it because they feel they should or because people are saying, how do I get to the next level? But I think that whole model, most people know, is not great, right? It's maybe not totally useless, but it's not very satisfactory.
The situation that I saw it or used it is more for retention of employees. And again, it was in specific phases of I've been to startups.
Yeah.
So it's depending the phase. The first phase, I totally agree. And let's say second phase, after 2-3 years, you want to retain them and you want to make sure they have, for them to see their future.
That's right.
And then I not push hard, but I give them the ability to do that, and I saw good results.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's exactly when most of these scale-ups start to do it. I think that it's good for the employees. But again, does it produce, and in that sense for retention, which is a totally valid outcome, of course, but does it produce a better performing organization? There I'm kind of skeptical. And since that's my abiding interest, again, I still think of myself as a business person first and a coach and trainer, or whatever you want to call it, second, right? For me, it's all about, does it make the boat go faster?
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah. There is one thing that we had actually a discussion with JJ.
Yeah, because
we said on loop, and we're talking about KPIs, OKRs. What's your take on that word?
Yeah, look, I think that Projal's kind of doing the better OKR, right, in a way, and I'm all for it, and I'm a big fan of on loop. In general, when you talk about systems, right, whether that's the management performance system or the OKR system or whatever system, the budgeting system, to me, systems are neither the problem nor the solution. What do I mean by that? You can have a bad budgeting system, right? It's super complicated and it takes months and nobody knows quite what they're supposed to do. Or you can have a very slick and efficient budgeting system.
Like NetSuite.
Yeah, or whatever. But the process, the steps, right? Yeah. Whatever. But the quality of the budget, the actual quality of the budget, is not a function of which system you use. It's a function of the conversations that you had. Do I feel committed to my target? Do I have the right level of resources? Was there a healthy debate between the finance people who say we can't afford that and the sales manager who says, yeah, but I need it? And did we all end up in a place where I go, hey, that's a reasonable outcome. I feel committed to that target with the resources that I have. That is a byproduct of conversation or of dialogue. And so if you want to have a great budget, have great dialogue, and which system you use kind of doesn't matter. And again, you look at companies that have implemented OKRs. I'm sure some have done it well and some have done it poorly. But in the end, the OKR is just a spark for a conversation. If you didn't hit your OKR, what does that mean? It's good? It's bad? It's just a flag that says, hey, we need to talk. Because you set that key result and you didn't hit it, or you set that objective, you didn't hit it. Now let's talk. Okay, what really matters is the talk. The system is just a flag. So the way I think about systems is they are flags to say, what do we need to talk about, when, and kind of what's the baseline data that we need to look at. And OKRs do that, budgets do that, lots of systems do
a notepad could do it if you have
and a notepad.
if you have
and
good
you can run a
conversations.
pretty good company with very basic systems. So here's a really fun thought experiment. Imagine I bring you two to be co-CEOs of a company that's got 200 people. Two versions. Actually, I'll make you each CEO of different companies. Okay. You get to be CEO of a company with fantastic systems and really terrible dialogue. People don't trust each other. They argue. There's really no, You come into a company of 200 people where there's fantastic dialogue, great culture, and zero systems. Which one's going to do better? My thesis is his company's going to do way better, because the first thing they'll do is they'll say, hey, we need systems. And they'll build good, smart, fit-for-purpose systems because they'll have that effective dialogue. Hey, that's too heavy for us. We don't need NetSuite. We can do it with this, right? And then they'll use those systems intelligently. You can have great systems, but all those systems are doing is flagging up what's working and what's not working. When the quality of dialogue's bad, the system can't fix it.
That makes sense. I got the better company.
You got the better company.
Couldn't agree more. I thinking about, I don't have your experience. I have kind of a track record, which is few multiple enterprises and few startups. And I mixed what you said and I said, how did it work better? It's when I had the people were more open to each other.
Exactly.
And yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
As long as there's really good dialogue, we'll figure out what our problems are. Yeah. The system will help. It'll give us a little information. It'll maybe get us there quicker. But systems don't solve problems. People solve problems
and make them. When we talked to Perrin, he had this really good concept of just relating the notion of compounding the things you do as you get better and better, and you either work out or you're healthy or you have a good habit. So in your book, if we kind of rewind to the ritual thing, you can have my water, by the way.
No, thank you. I need it.
Please, you're talking more. If we go back to the notion of rituals, when I think of smooth scaling, I think of it more from we got bigger, you're the CEO of that 200 person thing, it's getting harder. Well, the things that you would do to maybe not get there in a bad way start when you're younger. Yeah. So if we kind of rewind to say, hey, you're the founder of that 5-person, 10-person startup, which rituals would you implore upon them to start now that as they compound, they're going to be one of these smooth scalers? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Totally. What are the most basic? Can I answer a different question first?
Can.
So why do we need rituals, right? At all? Why not just have training? Why not have skills? And I think the answer is that we can all be great at all kinds of things when stress levels are low. I can be a great listener. I can be a great problem solver. I can be a great mediator between two different departments that aren't right. But as stresses get higher and the stakes get higher, most of us become less good at the soft skills. And So the ritual is a way of being able to perform at your best even under stress. And I think of it as analogous to what you go through in the military training. You've been in the military, I guess, right? This kind of constant, when a bullet flies, you drop to the ground, put your hat on, and load your gun, or whatever it is. It's because when a bullet actually flies, you're not thinking. You're going to do something absolutely dead stupid. And so we need you to have some basic reactive ritual, right, that you can rely on. So here's now the answer to your question. Somebody says something you don't agree with. I have a great relationship with you. You're my co-founder. I say, Michael, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. That'll never work. Probably fine. Scale that company to 300 people. Not good, right? Ritual number one, you say something I disagree with, and I say, ritual. Tell me more. Why do you think that's the right approach? I'm not getting it. I'm a bit confused. Okay, I see that, but I'm still concerned. How does that address this issue over here? So I have a protocol. It's called Curious, Confused, Concerned. Oh, I'm curious. That seems like a weird answer. How'd you come up with that? Okay, but I'm confused because the numbers don't add up to me. So help me figure that part out. Okay, I see that, but I'm still concerned that it doesn't address this other issue I have over here. So that's like a super simple, super beautiful. I like the fact that it has 3 C's. Yeah. It's easy to remember, right? So that would be a great one.
Yeah, and it works just for everything.
Works for kind of everything, right?
And work with your wife if you want.
Probably. Yeah.
And the other ritual, which is it's a simplistic version of one that's in the book, is just like, I'd like to hear from everyone on this, right? So you go into a meeting, there's 5 people, 2 voices or 3 will naturally be dominant. And that's fine. Maybe the other 2 we don't need to hear from, but maybe we do and we're just not hearing from them. So it's like, hey, we've had a good discussion, but before we make a decision, I'd just like to hear from everybody. How are you thinking about this? Are we going in the right direction? And then give them that little space. Say, Roz, what do you think? So if he feels that we're not going in the right direction, it's easier for him to put his hand up, right? In Asia, people may have trouble disagreeing with their boss or disagreeing in a large group. So you make it easy with them. There are little tricks like that. I'll give you another one. It's really cool. It's very simple. Typical thing leader in the room will do is say, okay, so I think we're kind of aligned. I think what we're all saying that we should take option B. Everybody good with that? There's nothing wrong with doing that. But it's so much better if you say, okay, I think we're getting to a point where we're going to make a decision, and I think it's option B. But before we go there, is there anybody who doesn't think it's option B? And can we just go around the room? And then Ross might put his hand up and say, yeah, maybe not thinking it's exactly the right thing to do. And all of a sudden we know we're not truly committed and aligned.
And then I'm getting fired.
Yeah, of course.
I had a lot of situations that you just, described. And I think I created this space, but the majority, I can't say everyone, but the majority didn't use it. Why?
Yeah. As you know, in Israel, they will use it whether you create the space or not, right? They will take the space.
This is true.
Is this true? I didn't know.
This is true.
And in fact, they will take so much space that there are 10 people all inhabiting the same space, right? Everybody's talking at once. Everybody has an opinion. Most people have 3 opinions, right?
Agreed.
Welcome to Israel.
I agree.
And in Asia, right, there's all that space and nobody's filling
No
it.
one's in
right?
it.
I mean, look, it's cultural, and we can delve into some of the cultural precedents. I think I'm pretty familiar with them. A lot of it has to do with how the schooling systems in Asia work, where there is a right and a wrong answer. And if you think you're not sure, and you do say the wrong answer, you really get kind of humiliated. The teacher will say, well, you don't know anything. And so they learn to not speak until they are sure. So I've asked probably 100 Asians, why didn't you speak up in that meeting? Was it because you didn't have something to say? No. I thought I might look stupid, would be the most common response. In America and Israel, we're not so worried about that. Probably are stupid, but we don't worry about it. So one thing I would say is it's a tiny hack, but it makes a big difference. If there are 6 of us here and I say, so what do people think about that? If I say, I'd like to hear from everybody what you think about that, somehow people feel invited. Okay, it's okay for me to speak up. And, maybe we won't get their full, open and honest opinion, but we'll at least hear something. So yeah, that's the second hack, is to say I'd like to hear from everybody. Let's just go around the room. Everybody tell us what you think about this issue.
Yeah, and I think it's you can see in your history where you've had leaders that are good at doing that versus the ones that kind of just steamroll through the process, and you can tell a difference, right?
Yeah. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with steamrolling. Like, I love to go fast, and I think I'm pretty smart, and sometimes I can see where it goes. The question is, can you read the room? And can you build in little checks to see if you are really taking the room with you? If I can grab the ball and run 50 yards like my son at football, runs down the pitch, right? And it works, fantastic. I'm all for it. That's productivity. And if people are with me and I can check and test, that's great. So we don't have to go inch by inch, all inching together in a direction.
Yeah.
But if I lose people, then I need to know that and say, okay, I obviously lost you guys. You're not with me. Fine. Let's go back. Where did I lose you?
Yeah.
But the question is, how do I know?
Yeah.
And there's going to be a bunch of ways. One is body language, but on a Zoom call, that's much harder, right? So if I can see people are rolling their eyes or a bit checked out, okay. The second is I can ask. I can say, hey, but I just went a long way. Are people with me, or do you feel like I kind of jumped the gun here, right? And just sort of EQ, right?
Yeah.
So I'm all for going fast, but to go fast and take people with you is a skill.
Harder problem.
Yeah.
Great. I want to ask a kind of back to your historical startup ecosystem kind of things. You when I follow you, it seems like you're kind of many different countries helping startups. You're not just Southeast Asia, and I don't think just America. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you've have global experience, but you're based here. Yep. So as you look at the ecosystem here, what's your, if I said report card, or more of what's Singapore doing great because you've seen it historically versus what could we be doing better?
Yeah.
Because from a comparison standpoint, it's just not the same, right?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I thank you. I do work a fair bit in the US and a fair bit in the UK, a little bit in Israel. And I also work a lot in Indonesia. And I think of Singapore and Indonesia as a single ecosystem in many ways. There's sort of 2 ways of answering that question. How are we doing that is within our control? And then, what's not so good, but maybe it's not our fault, it's out of our control. How are we doing? I think we're doing a lot right. We came from nothing. Singapore government did a million different things, starting with creating Block 71 and the NUS, what's it called, the program that Vin and Sure were on, the entrepreneur program or something, and all this stuff. I think they did a lot of really good stuff. And if you look at how many smart kids coming out of the top schools think now they want to be an entrepreneur compared to 15 years ago, but also how many of the 40-year-olds would consider being in an entrepreneurial organization. 10, 15 years ago, no 40-year-old would leave DBS Bank to join a fintech. None. Now they do. So I think we have done a lot right. And I think that the needle is in a very different position than when I came 15 years ago. Do I think we've built a lot of great companies? No. And there are many reasons for that. But a lot of it is just we did not have the depth of human capital to do this stuff. We didn't have the depth of technology leadership that you would have in Israel. We didn't have the depth of commercial talent that you would have in the US. So we've built some big companies and we've built some great small companies. We haven't built a lot of companies that I would consider to be truly great that are also big. A few.
Yeah.
And a lot of the business models were, pretty copy and paste, right? They were e-commerce models that had worked elsewhere. It's not too many truly world-class, unique businesses coming out of this region yet. But I do think if I were to give the ecosystem a scorecard, I think it's pretty great. I think it's pretty great considering where we started.
And do you think all this is like people are learning from it now? Because if you look at like that Lightspeed Ventures report where people kind of did a retrospective as the way I think about it, like probably picked some wrong signals, invested like to me, like with the people that have been here a while, like myself, it's like 17 years, I talked to the people that have been here 10, 12, and they all kind of go, you know what, I think there are people that have kind of learned from this and are not starting afresh, but thinking about the new path forward. Do you see it that way, or do you think we're kind of stuck?
A little of both. I think that from a management point of view, the ones starting companies now who spent 7 years at Traveloka or Grab or wherever are way better than the first generation. Like they're much more knowledgeable about the process and the people side and the scaling side, and they're much more thoughtful about that. So I think there are areas like that in which we've made a lot of progress. I still don't see the business models that blow my mind. Like I go to UK and I meet people and I'm like, holy shit, that's really cool. That's really interesting. That's going to be big. I don't have so many of those meetings here.
Yeah.
The question is why? Is it education? Is it government trajectory?
It can't be just education because
culture?
half the entrepreneurs here aren't locally educated, right? They're Western or whatever, and they've come from all over. I don't know. Maybe it's depth of market. I'll give you an example, right? Maybe this isn't the right example, but 2 clients. So one is a company in the UK that has been a BPO for the public sector. So they run call centers and stuff, right? Nobody came and pick up my trash, and they run the call center that deals with that. And that's a pretty low-tech business. But it turns out that the public sector is a very, very good sector for the application of AI because there's a lot of rote work. And they are deploying AI at an incredible rate into the public sector. And that business is going to be an amazing business. And they have the credibility with those people and so on. Now, that would never happen here because the government would do it themselves. It would never happen in Indonesia because it's just, right, the public sector isn't that efficient. And so I don't know what lesson you can draw from that. But that would be like one of the companies that I think is very cool. There's a company I work with in California that is doing eVTOL aircraft, so electric vertical takeoff landing. The company's 100% owned by Larry Page. I mean, the truth is, it's probably not a great commercial thing. Like, you need pretty deep pockets to do this stuff. So maybe you can only do that there because Larry Page. But yeah, I think we're not yet seeing too many world-class companies come out of this part of the world. A couple.
Let's hope it improves.
Yeah. I can continue with you for more than an hour. I have so many things that I'm thinking of.
Well, I'm sure there's a bar nearby. We can do that.
Let's do that. Are you good?
Yeah.
We're going to do our routine just for ending.
Cool.
And I know you're around, your age is around 45.
Yeah, about
around
that.
It, about that.
Yeah.
If you're going to go back to your 20 years old, what you would tell him?
Oh, man. Grow up. Get a clue. Jeez, where do I start? 20 years old. You know, the entrepreneurial world was sort of non-existent then, right? We didn't really use the word. We didn't know how to do this stuff. But I would have said, find a way to get into an entrepreneurial thing earlier. So I started at 40, and I would have loved to have started 30. Like, it was good to have a grounding in, other stuff. And of course, some people did, but a lot fewer. But I would have said, try harder, look harder, find that entrepreneurial thing, because the rate of learning is higher. That's all, right? Not to make money or whatever, but just rate of learning. Yeah, the rest would just be like, grow up.
I think we all tell ourselves that. You're busy. You wrote a book. I think these are tough to do, and I follow you with all the companies. Like, I've just talked to them. How do you keep your health and wellness like on track with the traveling and being busy? And
it is a very timely topic. So I did this year 5 trips to Europe, 3 trips to the US, some clients, some books, some holiday, and I had 2 more trips and I just canceled them both because I came back and the accumulated wear and tear was pretty noticeable. I felt clunky and stiff and heavy and not good. So now I'm just sitting tight and I'm going to the gym every day and I'm eating healthier. So it's a balancing act, right? I'm not particularly an elite athlete or anything like that. I'm lucky that my natural taste in food is like super healthy. I'm going to plug Athletic Beer because it's the best beer I've tasted and it's alcohol free.
You get that shipped here? It's here?
Yeah, it's here. You can get it on Redmart now.
Yeah. I think the other podcast they're filming right now is the lady who covers all the non-alcoholic trends in business.
I would try it.
The non-alcoholic wine's still shit. I just tried it. It's undrinkable. Athletic Beer just won. So that company, by the way, Athletic Beer is now the largest non-alcoholic beer in the world. They sell more than Heineken.
Wow.
And they just won a taste test blind with people who didn't know that it was non-alcoholic. It was against real beers.
I thought you were going to say, and they are Czech.
Yeah. No, they're not
No,
Czech.
they're not.
No, it's American, and they just raised $500 million to expand.
Yeah, it's big. It's big.
Yeah, it's big. So eat well, that comes easily to me. Drink non-alcoholic beer, that's a good substitute for real drinking. And then, I'm lucky I have a really nice gym. I live in Sentosa. My gym overlooks the water.
Oh,
and
great.
It's fantastic. So, but I could do better.
Got it. And mentally?
I am not into any of those good practices. Like, I don't meditate. I'm not,
Made the gym. I made that.
Gym. That's a good one. I tend to be pretty stable. Like, I don't get super stressed. And if I do, just taking a morning off is usually enough.
Got it.
So I've kind of operating at a certain level that I can stay at quite easily.
Yeah.
Do I think I could have reached some higher level if I just meditated for 2 hours a day? Probably, but I just
But the
never
idea that
got
you tell yourself, hey, I'm cutting 2 trips is as mental as much as physical, right?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to give yourself space to refresh, right?
Yeah.
So I think we all handle it different ways.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's different on this stuff.
Yeah. I always tell people when they talk about meditation or that, I'm like, yeah, that's the gym.
Yeah.
I'm in my head when I'm in the gym.
But I mean, there are people who can work, 16 hours. I'll tell you, this is a topic I find really fascinating. But last thing, so there are people who can work at crazy levels of intensity and exhibit no stress.
Got it.
Right? Come home at midnight, having been to 3 cities and 15 meetings, and just kiss the kids, totally relaxed, in the zone, fully present. I'm not like that. Like, I can work hard.
I'm like that.
You're like that?
I did it when I was in startup time. I like that. Same thing.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
I don't know if I can do it now again, but I
So I can work at a pretty high level and still be balanced, but there's a point at which I sort of spin out.
Yeah, I think a lot of us. All right, so lastly, since you've written a book, what do you read, and any recommendations for books or stuff you're watching that
I want to say,
wanna
besides
pass
opening
on?
a book and say,
other than this book, which we're telling everybody,
Good
job.
get this book.
Yeah, that's Gosh, that's great. So I have to say, I watch a fair bit of Netflix when I'm at home. I live alone, and so there's some pretty fun shows on Netflix. There's one that I just finished called something like Go Ahead Brother. It's a Polish show. I
Oh,
like
yes, I know that
watching
one.
stuff from obscure countries. But actually the great one is called Occupied. It's a Norwegian show. Nobody's seen it, and it's mind-blowingly good television.
Okay.
Really interesting. So
have to
it's
check it
about
out.
a Russian occupation of Norway. So
Noted.
it's very cool.
Note.
Yeah, we like our Netflix. All right, we got to go.
Cool.
This was fantastic. Thanks so much. And everybody, check out Rob's book. And it's just great to have you here.
Great
Yeah.
to meet you both.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.